I drove 600 miles for Christmas. Mom shut the door. Wrong house, she said. Hours later, my brother claimed $68,540 made her family. I locked the money. By morning, 51 calls, 11 threats. Can you imagine driving 14 grueling hours through a blinding snowstorm, your arms laden with carefully chosen gifts, your heart aching for a family reunion, only for your own mother to open the door, look you dead in the eye, and coldly say, "Sorry, wrong house," before slamming it shut? That's what happened to me last Christmas Eve, and it wasn't just a rude awakening, it was the moment my entire world cracked wide open. I'm Autumn Wilson, 32, and that night changed everything. I stood there, frozen, snowflakes melting on my eyelashes, mixing with tears I couldn't hold back. Growing up in our small Midwestern town, I always thought our family was normal. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Mom was a nurse, Dad ran the hardware store. My brother Ethan and I built blanket forts, whispering secrets long after bedtime. Those childhood memories feel like snapshots from someone else's life now. Everything changed when I was 13. The arguments between Mom and Dad got louder, their voices carrying through our thin walls. I'd pull my pillow over my head, desperate to block out the sound of Mom crying or Dad slamming doors. One morning, I came downstairs to find Mom at the kitchen table, her eyes red but strangely calm. "Your father's moving out," she said, stirring her coffee like she was discussing the weather. My world collapsed while the toaster popped up with my breakfast, utterly oblivious. Ethan, at 11, took it harder. He stopped talking for nearly a month. 2 years later, Richard came into our lives. He wore expensive suits, drove a car that made our neighbors stare. He owned 3 car dealerships, and lived in a house twice the size of ours. Mom seemed different around him, laughing more, touching her hair, wearing makeup even on weekdays. "He makes me happy," she told us when they announced their wedding. "Don't you want me to be happy?" Of course we did. But Richard's arrival marked the beginning of Mom's complete transformation. The woman who taught me to clip coupons suddenly wore designer clothes. The mother who made us return expensive birthday gifts now saw nothing wrong with Richard buying her diamond earrings just because. At first, the changes were subtle. She'd comment on our friends' families, who had money and who didn't. She joined Richard's country club and started dropping names. I remember wearing my favorite thrift store jeans to dinner once, and she pulled me aside, whispering, "We don't dress like that anymore," as if poverty might be contagious. Despite these tensions, school was my escape. I threw myself into academics, and by senior year, I'd earned a partial scholarship to Northwestern. Richard offered to pay the difference, but there were strings. "Business or pre-law," he said. "No point wasting money on those artsy degrees." I chose student loans and majored in communications. Mom couldn't understand why. "Pride won't keep you warm at night," she sneered. Through college and beyond, I worked multiple jobs, building my career. Entry-level positions led to promotions, and by 28, I was a marketing executive at a respected Chicago firm. Each step was my effort, my merit. I paid off my loans early, built my savings. That financial independence felt like armor against Mom's subtle digs. Christmas was the one tradition holding our fragmenting family together. Even with the tension, we always gathered at Mom and Richard's on Christmas Eve. Last year's had been strained. Mom showcased her renovated kitchen to her friends while I sat alone. Richard talked business with his golf buddies. Ethan arrived late, exchanged gifts, and left for his girlfriend's family. That awkward Christmas prompted me to skip Thanksgiving. I claimed a work project, but the truth was, I couldn't bear another holiday feeling like an outsider in my own family. Mom seemed almost relieved when I canceled, which stung more than I wanted to admit. But Christmas was different. Sacred. So, despite the growing distance, I requested time off, packed my car with carefully selected gifts, and prepared for the 600-mile journey to their new home in rural Tennessee. "Are you sure you want to drive all that way?" my friend Julia asked. "You could fly." The truth was, flying would cut too deeply into the money I'd already spent on gifts. A designer scarf for Mom, expensive scotch for Richard, the latest gaming console for Ethan, who couldn't afford it on his teacher's salary. The day before I left, I called Ethan to confirm. "Mom's going all out this year," he said. "Richard's business partners are coming for Christmas Eve. Just be prepared." "Okay, for what?" I asked, sensing something in his voice. "Nothing specific. You know how she gets around his crowd. Just call me when you're close." That conversation should have been my warning. But I dismissed the uneasy feeling, clinging to the hope that this Christmas might bridge the gap. Maybe my success would finally make her proud. Maybe this time, I'd finally feel like I belonged. The first snowflakes fell just outside Indianapolis, 6 hours into my journey. By Tennessee, it was a proper storm. I crawled, knuckles white on the wheel, windshield wipers struggling. A 10-hour drive stretched to 14. "Almost there," I murmured, turning onto the private road leading to their new estate. I hadn't seen this place since they moved last spring. Hidden behind towering oaks and manicured hedges, it was a far cry from the modest suburban house where Mom raised us. The security gate swung open after I pressed the intercom. The house came into view, A sprawling colonial mansion with white columns, expansive windows, glowing with warm light. Christmas decorations adorned every surface, professionally installed lights, life-sized nutcrackers flanking the entrance, an enormous wreath. Less cozy Christmas, more holiday showroom. I parked behind a row of luxury vehicles, noticing a catering van. Mom had mentioned dinner, but not catered. I checked my appearance in the rearview mirror, applying fresh lipstick, smoothing my travel-rumpled hair. After 14 hours, I looked exhausted, dark circles under my eyes. From the trunk, I retrieved the carefully wrapped presents. The designer scarf for Mom had cost nearly a week's salary. Richard's rare scotch required a special order. For Ethan, the gaming system he talked about for months. My arms laden with gifts and my overnight bag, I crunched through the snow to the front door. The chime echoed impressively. Through the decorative glass, I saw movement inside. People mingling, drinks in hand, dressed in cocktail attire. My heart sank. No one had mentioned a formal gathering. The door swung open, and there stood my mother. At 54, Patricia Wilson Montgomery looked 10 years younger, blonde hair professionally styled, slim figure elegant in a black dress. For a fleeting moment, I saw recognition in her eyes, followed immediately by alarm, then coldness. Mom, hi. Sorry I'm so late. The weather was terrible, I began. Her perfectly manicured hand gripped the door. Edge. I'm sorry, she interrupted, her voice clipped and unfamiliar. Wrong house. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. What? Mom, it's me, Autumn. Behind her, a group of well-dressed guests turned curiously. Richard appeared in the hallway, whiskey tumbler in hand, a look of discomfort crossing his face before he quickly retreated. Not tonight, Mom hissed quietly, her smile rigid. We have important guests. I told you we do family Christmas tomorrow. No, you didn't. We always do Christmas Eve. I drove 14 hours. The door closed in my face. Not a slam, but firm enough that the message was unmistakable. I stood there, arms still full of gifts, shock rendering me immobile. Through the glass, I watched my mother return to her guests, laughing as if nothing had happened. Numbness gave way to humiliation as a couple walking toward the house witnessed the entire exchange. They averted their eyes awkwardly, giving me a wide berth, as if my unwantedness might be contagious. Snowflakes accumulated on the gifts as I fumbled for my phone, nearly dropping everything. I called Mom first, watching through the window as she glanced at her phone, saw my name, and tucked it back into her pocket without answering. Next, Richard, then Ethan. No answer from either. I sent texts to all three. Mom, I'm outside. Please let me in. Richard, did Mom tell you I wasn't supposed to come until tomorrow? Ethan, where are you? Mom just turned me away at the door. Mom's message showed as read, but no reply. Richard's remained unread. Ethan's delivered, but not seen. 10 minutes passed as I stood in the intensifying snowfall, humiliation turning to anger, then to a deep aching hurt that settled in my chest. A catering staff member exited a side door, giving me a curious look. Excuse me, I called out, desperation overriding dignity. Could you please tell Patricia that her daughter is still waiting outside? The young man looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, ma'am. We're not supposed to interrupt the party with messages. Defeated, I retreated to my car, dumping the gifts onto the passenger seat. Tears threatened, but I fought them back, focusing instead on where to go. The nearest hotel was 30 minutes away, and in this weather, the drive would be hazardous. I had nowhere else. As I sat with the engine running, heat blasting, I saw my mother appear at one of the large windows overlooking the driveway. Our eyes met briefly before she drew the curtains closed, erasing me from her view as efficiently as she had erased me from her evening. That's when the tears finally came. Hot, angry tears that blurred my vision as I backed out of the driveway. I had no destination, just the desperate need to escape the humiliation of being treated like an unwelcome stranger by my own mother. I drove aimlessly through unfamiliar roads, wipers barely keeping up. My phone rang Ethan. I pulled into an empty gas station parking lot to answer. Autumn, where are you? His voice sounded breathless, worried. Driving around in a snowstorm because our mother just pretended not to know me, I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. She did what? The shock in his tone was genuine. I'm not at the house. I was going to come later after Mom's party thing. She didn't tell me you were coming tonight. She didn't tell me there was a party. I countered. She never said anything about changing our Christmas Eve tradition. There was a pause. Meet me at Denny's off Highway 41. You know where that is? No, but I have GPS. Give me 20 minutes. The Denny's was nearly empty when I arrived. Ethan was already there, waving from a corner table. At 29, he looked older than his years, dark hair receding, perpetual worry lines etched between his brows. He stood to hug me, and I clung to him a moment longer than usual, fighting fresh tears. I ordered coffee, he said. You look like you need it. I need something stronger, I said, my hand still shaking. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit from childhood. I can't believe she turned you away. Actually, no. I can believe it. Things have gotten weird lately. Weird how? We talk every week, Ethan. You never said anything was wrong. Because it's been gradual. And honestly, I didn't want to worry you. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Did you know Grandpa Earl left her money when he died last spring? I frowned. No. She told me he'd spent most of his savings on medical care. Barely enough for the funeral. Ethan's expression darkened. That's a lie. He had a life insurance policy worth $68,540. I saw the check. The precision of the numbers struck me. Why would she lie about that? Because Grandpa wanted it split between all of us. He told me before he died. Equal shares. He even wrote it in a letter, but it wasn't legally binding. My coffee sat untouched, growing cold. So she just kept it all without telling me? Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. I made copies of everything. The insurance payout, Grandpa's letter, the bank deposit. He slid them across the table. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. The papers confirmed everything. My hands trembled as I read Grandpa's familiar handwriting, expressing his wish that the money be shared among his daughter and grandchildren. There's more, Ethan said quietly. She's been telling people you've abandoned the family, that you're too busy with your fancy Chicago job to visit or call. That's absurd. I call her every Sunday. I send cards for every birthday. I know, but her new friends don't know that. To them, you're the ungrateful daughter who's too good for her family now. Even some of the extended family believes it. Aunt Carol asked me last month if you were ever going to make amends with Mom. The injustice of it burned in my throat. Make amends for what? Being successful on my own terms? For not letting Richard dictate my career path? For not playing along with her new identity as the society wife with the perfect life? Ethan sighed heavily. The money changed her, Autumn. Or maybe it just revealed who she always was. She joined that exclusive country club. Suddenly, she's hosting dinner parties for Richard's associates, buying art she doesn't understand, acting like we grew up with silver spoons instead of struggling after Dad left. The waitress arrived to take our order, but my appetite had vanished. I requested more coffee, just to have something to hold on to. So what now? I asked after the waitress left. I've driven 600 miles to spend Christmas with a woman who slammed the door in my face. I can't even go to a hotel because my luggage is trapped in my car under all the gifts I bought for people who apparently don't want me around. Ethan reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Stay with me. My apartment's small, but the couch pulls out. We'll figure this out together. As the reality of the situation fully hit me, tears welled up again. I had spent thousands of dollars on gifts and travel, taken precious vacation days, and endured a 14-hour drive through hazardous conditions, all to be treated like an unwelcome intruder by my own mother. I feel so stupid, I whispered, a tear sliding down my cheek. I keep trying to be part of this family, and I keep getting shown that I don't belong. That's not true, Ethan said firmly. You belong with the people who actually care about you. Mom's the one who doesn't deserve to have you in her life. We sat in that Denny's for nearly 3 hours. Ethan filled me in on all the changes in our mother's behavior, how she referred to us as her first family to her new friends, as if we were a practice round before her real life began. How she redecorated her new home without a single family photo that included our father or our original house. How she criticized my career choices to anyone who would listen, painting herself as the concerned mother of a daughter who refused her help. By the time we left, the snow had stopped and something had hardened inside me. The hurt was still there, a raw wound beneath my ribs. But now it was accompanied by a cold clarity. 4 years, I had been chasing the approval of a woman who had chosen status over her own children. It was time to stop running that race. Ethan led me to his modest apartment, helping me bring in the gifts. We placed them in a corner, a sad little pile of expensive peace offerings that would never be opened as intended. Tomorrow, Ethan said as he made up the sofa bed, we're going to have our own Christmas, and then we're going to figure out what to do about Mom and that inheritance. For the first time since arriving in Tennessee, I felt a small spark of warmth. Not everything was lost. I still had my brother, and perhaps that was family enough. I woke up on Ethan's pull-out couch to the smell of coffee and the sound of him rummaging in the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through windows that had no curtains, illuminating the modest one-bedroom apartment where my brother had lived since becoming a high school English teacher 3 years ago. The contrast between his simple home and our mother's mansion couldn't have been more stark. Morning, he called, noticing I was awake. I'm making eggs. It's pretty much all I have besides cereal. Eggs sound perfect. I sat up, wincing at the stiffness in my back. What time is it? Almost 11 o'clock. You were exhausted, so I let you sleep. After breakfast, we sat at Ethan's small kitchen table, formulating a plan. Despite my initial instinct to avoid further confrontation, Ethan convinced me we needed to address the situation directly. She's having her big Christmas dinner tonight, he explained. All of Richard's business partners and their wives. She's been planning it for months. And you think we should crash it? The idea made my stomach tighten. Not crash, he said, a mischievous smile playing on his lips. I'm still invited. I'll just bring you as my plus one. She won't make a scene in front of her precious guests. I wasn't so sure. After yesterday's door-slamming incident, I wouldn't put anything past her. But the alternative, slinking away without confronting her lies, felt worse. We spent the afternoon preparing. I retrieved my luggage from the car and changed into the outfit I packed for Christmas dinner, a deep green wrap dress that I knew looked good on me. Ethan put on a button-down shirt and the only tie he owned, a gift from his students with tiny Shakespeare quotes printed on it. Ready for battle? He asked as we stood by his car at 7 p.m. As ready as I'll ever be. The drive to Mom and Richard's estate felt surreal. 12 hours ago, I'd been turned away from this very house. Now I was returning like some avenging spirit, determined to expose the truth. The driveway was even more crowded than the previous night. Luxury cars lined up like soldiers, and a valet took Ethan's keys. They hired a valet for a family dinner? I whispered, incredulous, as we approached the front door. Christmas music drifted from inside, along with the murmur of dozens of conversations and occasional laughter. Ethan squeezed my hand reassuringly before ringing the doorbell. This time, Richard answered, his expression shifting from welcome to shock when he saw me standing beside Ethan. Ethan and Autumn. This is a surprise. His eyes darted nervously over our shoulders as if expecting more uninvited guests. Merry Christmas, Richard, I said, summoning a confidence I didn't feel. I hope you don't mind that I came with Ethan after yesterday's misunderstanding. I didn't want to miss family Christmas. Richard's discomfort was palpable as he stepped back to let us enter. Of course. Your mother will be pleased you could make it after all. The interior of the house was even more impressive than it had appeared from outside. Vaulted ceilings, marble floors, a massive Christmas tree that must have cost thousands to decorate. About 30 people mingled throughout the open-concept main floor, all dressed impeccably, many wearing jewelry that caught the light from the crystal chandelier. There's Mom, Ethan murmured, nodding toward the dining room. Our mother stood with a small group of women, gesturing animatedly as she told some story that had them all laughing. She wore a different black dress than yesterday, this one adorned with subtle sequins that sparkled when she moved. She looked elegant, successful, and completely in her element, until she turned and saw me. The smile froze on her face. For a split second, naked panic flashed in her eyes before she composed herself. She excused herself from her friends and made her way toward us with mechanical precision. Ethan, she said tightly when she reached us, deliberately not looking at me. Could I speak with you in the kitchen? Whatever you need to say, you can say it to both of us, Ethan replied calmly. Her smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened. Fine. Both of you. Kitchen. Now. We followed her through the crowd, smiling politely at curious glances from guests. The catering staff worked efficiently in the enormous chef's kitchen, but Mom led us through to a butler's pantry that offered some privacy. The moment the door closed behind us, she rounded on me. What are you doing here? I told you very clearly that family Christmas is tomorrow. No, you didn't, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. You said, and I quote, sorry, wrong house, and then closed the door in my face. I was in the middle of hosting important people. You showed up unannounced, looking like you just rolled out of bed. I had driven for 14 hours through a snowstorm to be with my family for Christmas Eve, just like we've done every year of my life. Plans change, Autumn. I sent you an email about it weeks ago. No, you didn't. I pulled out my phone. I checked every email, text, and voicemail from you. There was nothing about changing our Christmas Eve tradition. Mom's gaze flicked to Ethan, seeking an ally, but his expression remained neutral. Well, there's clearly been a miscommunication. But you're here now, so let's make the best of it. There's not really room at the dinner table, but you can join for dessert. That's not why I'm here, I interrupted. I want to talk about Grandpa Earl's insurance money. The color drained from her face. Her eyes darted to Ethan, who nodded slightly. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice had lost its conviction. $68,540, I said. The life insurance payout that Grandpa wanted split between all of us. The money you kept for yourself while telling me there was nothing left after his medical bills. That's a family matter we can discuss tomorrow, she hissed, glancing nervously at the door. This is hardly the time or place. Why have you been telling people I abandoned the family? I pressed on. Why lie about me not calling or visiting when I've done everything possible? To maintain our relationship. Richard entered the pantry, closing the door quietly behind him. Everything okay in here? The Andersons were asking about you, Patricia. Everything's fine, Mom said quickly. Just a small family disagreement about Grandpa's inheritance, I added, watching Richard's expression. Did you know about that, Richard? About how Grandpa wanted it split between all of us. A flicker of discomfort crossed his face. That's between your mother and you kids. I don't get involved in those matters. Convenient, Ethan muttered. Mom's composure was cracking. You two are trying to ruin my Christmas dinner out of spite. I've worked for months planning this evening. We're trying to understand why you've shut Autumn out. Ethan interrupted. Why you've lied about her to family and friends. Why you kept Grandpa's money for yourself? I haven't shut anyone out. Autumn chose her path long ago when she rejected our help and moved to Chicago. She made it very clear she didn't need family support. I didn't reject your help, I said, the old hurt surfacing. I rejected Richard's conditions on that help. There's a difference. And now you've come back because you want Grandpa's money, she snapped. How convenient. The accusation stung. I didn't even know about the money until last night. I came back because it's Christmas, and I foolishly thought my own mother would want to see me. Well, you thought wrong, she said, the words like ice shards. You don't fit into this life anymore, Autumn. You made your choices, and I've made mine. Money makes family, and you're not part of this anymore. The statement hung in the air, its cruelty reverberating in the small space. Richard looked away, unwilling to meet my eyes. Ethan's face flushed with anger. Jesus, Mom, he said softly. Do you even hear yourself? The pantry door opened again, and Aunt Carol, Mom's older sister, stood frozen in the doorway, a look of shock on her face. Patricia, what's going on? Did I just hear you say money makes family? Mom's mask of composure slipped completely. Carol, this is a private conversation. I came looking for more wine, and instead I find you saying the most horrible thing I've ever heard to your own daughter. What is wrong with you, Patricia? And what's this about Dad's insurance money? The next 20 minutes were chaos as the truth spilled out from all sides. Aunt Carol's outrage when she learned about the inheritance, Richard's uncomfortable admission that he'd known about the money all along, Mom's increasingly desperate attempts to justify her actions. Through it all, I stood in stunned silence, watching the careful facade of my mother's perfect life crumble in real time. I think we should go, Ethan finally said, placing a protective hand on my shoulder. This isn't solving anything tonight. I nodded, emotionally exhausted. As we turned to leave, Mom grabbed my arm. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back tomorrow, she said, her voice shaking with either rage or fear. I mean it, Autumn. This is your last chance to be part of this family. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time saw not my mother, but a stranger. Someone so consumed by appearances and status that she'd sacrifice her own children to maintain the illusion. You're right about one thing, I said quietly. Money does make your family, but it doesn't make mine. With that, Ethan and I walked out of the pantry, through the crowded house full of oblivious guests, and into the cold night air. Behind us, the perfect Christmas Eve dinner continued. But something irreparable had broken inside that house. And strangely, despite the tears streaming down my face, I felt lighter than I had in years. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold. I woke in a modest hotel room. Ethan had insisted on paying for it, saying I deserved one night in a real bed. We had agreed to meet for breakfast, but I had one call to make first. Martin Greenberg had been our family lawyer for as long as I could remember. If anyone would know the legal details of the inheritance situation, it would be Martin. I wasn't sure he'd answer on Christmas morning, but to my surprise, he picked up on the third ring. Autumn Wilson, he said warmly. Merry Christmas. This is unexpected. Merry Christmas, Martin. I'm sorry to bother you on the holiday. Nonsense. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath. I need to know about my grandfather's life insurance policy, the one that paid out to my mother earlier this year. There was a pause. I see. May I ask why you're inquiring about this now? Because I just found out about it yesterday. Mom told me there was no money left after Grandpa's medical expenses. Martin's sigh was audible. I was afraid something like this might happen. Your grandfather was very clear about his wishes, but unfortunately, he didn't make them legally binding. So she had the right to keep all the money. Legally speaking, yes. The policy named your mother as the sole beneficiary. However, your grandfather left a letter with me expressing his wish that the proceeds be divided equally between your mother, you, and your brother. I provided that letter to your mother when the insurance paid out. My grip tightened on the phone. And there's nothing that can be done about it now. Well, Martin said slowly, that depends on what you want to accomplish. The money is legally hers, but if there's evidence she acknowledged your grandfather's wishes and agreed to honor them, we might have grounds to challenge her control of the funds. What kind of evidence? Emails, texts, recorded conversations where she confirmed she would split the money. Anything that shows she recognized your claim to a portion of the inheritance. I thought of the copies Ethan had made, the insurance document, Grandpa's letter, the bank deposit. I need to check with my brother, but I think we might have something. What would be the next step? If you're serious about pursuing this, we could file for an emergency injunction to freeze the funds until the matter is resolved. It's an aggressive move, especially on Christmas. But if you're concerned she might spend the money quickly, she's already spending it, I said, thinking of a lavish party. How quickly could this happen? I could file the paperwork electronically today. It's Christmas, so a judge might not review it until tomorrow, but given the circumstances and the relatively modest sum involved, we might get lucky. By the time I met Ethan for breakfast at a local diner, I had made my decision. We compared notes on our evidence, and Ethan revealed a crucial piece. A text message from Mom sent 3 months ago, acknowledging that she would take care of Grandpa's wishes soon, in response to Ethan asking when we would receive our portions. That might be enough, I said. Martin thinks we can at least freeze the money while the legal questions get sorted out. Ethan pushed his eggs around his plate. Are you sure you want to do this? It's going to make the rift with Mom even worse. What rift could be worse than her telling me I don't belong in the family anymore? That money makes her family, and I'm not part of it. The pain was still fresh, her words echoing in my mind. Besides, this isn't about the money. It's about her lying to us, hiding Grandpa's wishes, and using his inheritance to fund her social climbing while telling everyone I've abandoned the family. You're right, he sighed. I just hate that it's come to this. After breakfast, I called Martin back and gave him the go-ahead. Within an hour, he had emailed me documents to digitally sign, and by early afternoon, the emergency petition had been filed. All we could do now was wait. Back at the hotel, I tried to salvage some semblance of Christmas spirit. Ethan and I exchanged the gifts we brought for each other, a leather messenger bag for him, wireless headphones for me. We ordered Chinese food and watched It's a Wonderful Life on the hotel TV, trying not to think about the family dinner happening across town without us. My phone rang around 6 p.m. It was Aunt Carol. Autumn, honey, how are you holding up? I'm okay. Better than expected, actually. I've been thinking about you all day. I want you to know I had no idea what Patricia was doing about the inheritance or the things she's been saying about you. None of us did. Her support brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you. That means a lot. I couldn't stay at that dinner last night after what I heard. I told Patricia exactly what I thought of her behavior and left. Several others did too once they understood what had happened. A small, petty part of me was gratified to know Mom's perfect Christmas Eve had been disrupted. I filed legal paperwork today, Carol, to freeze Grandpa's insurance money until this gets sorted out. Good, she said firmly. Dad would be horrified by what she's done. He adored you, Autumn. You know that, right? After we hung up, I checked my email and found a notification from Martin. The judge had reviewed our emergency petition and granted a temporary freeze on the funds. It would remain in place until a hearing could be scheduled in the new year. As if on cue, my phone began buzzing with incoming texts, all from my mother. What have you done? The bank just called about a freeze on my account. How dare you do this on Christmas? Then a call from Richard. I let it go to voicemail, then listened. Autumn, this is unnecessary and harmful to your mother. We need to discuss this like adults. Please call me back so we can work this out without lawyers. More texts from Mom followed, alternating between rage and manipulation. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? I was going to share the money eventually when the time was right. You're breaking my heart, Autumn. Is this really what you want? Your grandfather would be ashamed of you. That last one stung, but I knew it wasn't true. Grandpa Earl had been kind and fair his entire life. He wouldn't have wanted his money to become a weapon. Block her number, Ethan suggested when I showed him the messages. At least for tonight. Give yourself a break. I couldn't bring myself to block her entirely, but I did silence the notifications. Whatever resolution would come, it wouldn't happen tonight on Christmas. Later that evening, as Ethan dozed on the hotel room's second bed, I opened my laptop and found an email from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in months. Hey, Autumn. I heard what happened with Aunt Patricia. The family group chat is blowing up. Just wanted you to know most of us are on your side. Mom and Aunt Carol told everyone about the inheritance thing and how Aunt Patricia has been lying about you. It's not right. Anyway, if you're still in town and want to come to our place for leftovers tomorrow, you and Ethan are welcome. No pressure, just an offer. Love, Jamie. For the first time since arriving in Tennessee, a genuine smile crossed my face. I had lost one family connection, but perhaps others could be strengthened in its place. As painful as this Christmas had been, it had revealed truths that had been hidden for too long. And maybe that was a gift in itself, the gift of clarity, of seeing people as they truly are. I closed my laptop and lay back on the hotel bed, watching the blinking lights of a sad, little artificial Christmas tree in the corner of the room. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight at least, I could rest knowing I had stood up for myself and for what was right. The week between Christmas and New Year's Eve passed in a strange limbo. Instead of returning to Chicago, I extended my hotel stay, working remotely. Ethan had offered his couch again, but I needed space to process everything, and he needed a break from the family drama to spend time with his girlfriend. My mother's initial barrage of angry messages had given way to a calculated silence. Richard, however, called daily with increasingly generous settlement offers, each one presented as a magnanimous gesture rather than an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Your mother is willing to give you $20,000 if you'll drop this legal nonsense, he said during his most recent call. That's more than your share would have been anyway. This isn't about the money, Richard, I repeated, a phrase that had become my mantra. It's about the principle and about the lies she's been telling about me. People say things they don't mean when they're upset. You know how your mother gets. But that was just it. I didn't know how she got. I had spent my entire adult life making excuses for her behavior, convincing myself that her conditional love was better than no love at all. The events of Christmas Eve had finally forced me to see the truth I'd been avoiding. My mother's love came with terms and conditions I could never satisfy. On New Year's Eve morning, my hotel room phone rang. It was the front desk. "Miss Wilson, there's an elderly lady here asking for you. Mrs. Eleanor Wilson. She says she's your great-aunt." Great-aunt Eleanor was my grandfather's sister, a woman in her 80s who I hadn't seen in years. Curious and a little concerned, I asked the desk to send her up. She appeared at my door minutes later, a tiny figure bundled in a red wool coat, her white hair perfectly set. "Autumn, dear," she said, accepting my hug with surprising strength. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion. Carol told me you were staying here." "Not at all. Please come in. Can I get you some coffee or tea?" "Tea would be lovely." As I prepared the hotel room's modest coffee maker, Eleanor settled into the armchair, removing her gloves with deliberate care. "I've been hearing quite a story about Patricia and Earl's insurance money," she said without preamble. "Is it true she kept it all for herself?" I nodded, pouring hot water over the tea bag. "She did, and she told me there was no money left after Grandpa's medical expenses." Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. "That doesn't surprise me as much as it should. Patricia always had champagne taste on a beer budget, as my brother used to say. When she married that car dealer, I warned Earl she might change." She accepted the tea with a nod of thanks. "I didn't come just to gossip about your mother, though. I brought you something." From her large handbag, she retrieved a worn leather photo album. "These were Earl's. He would want you to have them." The album contained photographs I had never seen before. My grandfather as a young man, his wedding to my grandmother, my mother as a child, and then, toward the end, pictures of me and Ethan with Grandpa Earl. Fishing trips, birthday parties, ordinary moments preserved in fading color. "He was so proud of you," Aunt Eleanor said, pointing to a photo of me at my high school graduation, Grandpa beaming beside me. "He told everyone how you earned that scholarship on your own merit, how you worked all those jobs to put yourself through college without taking a penny from Richard." Tears pricked at my eyes. "I didn't know that. Earl understood the value of making your own way. It's why he left that insurance money to be split among you all. He wanted to give you a boost, not a crutch." She patted my hand. Your mother never quite grasped that distinction. We spent the next hour looking through the album, Eleanor sharing stories about my grandfather I had never heard. "Your grandfather believed family was about support, not control," she said as she prepared to leave. "Remember that, whatever happens with Patricia." After she left, I found myself drawn to the window, watching the preparations for New Year's Eve celebrations in the park across from the hotel. Families setting up picnic blankets, teenagers throwing frisbees, couples walking hand in hand. My phone rang. Martin Greenberg, our lawyer. "I have news," he said. "The judge has scheduled a hearing for January 5th. But more importantly, I've been in discussions with your mother's attorney." "She hired an attorney?" Somehow this made everything more real. "Yes. And here's the interesting part. Her lawyer has indicated she might be willing to settle, to divide the money as your grandfather intended, if we can keep this out of court." "Why the sudden change of heart?" Martin's voice took on a diplomatic tone. "It seems several family members have expressed their disappointment in her actions, and there may be some concern about how this would look to her new social circle if it became public. In other words, the threat to her carefully constructed image was more persuasive than any moral argument could ever be." "What do you think I should do?" I asked. "Legally, we have a decent case, but litigation is expensive and emotionally draining. If she's willing to do the right thing now, even for the wrong reasons, it might be best to accept." I promised to think about it, and hung up, my mind churning with conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted the validation of a legal victory, but another part just wanted this chapter closed so I could move forward. As evening approached, my phone rang again. An unexpected caller. "Autumn, it's Richard. I'm downtown. Could we meet for coffee? Just the two of us." Curiosity overcame caution, and I agreed to meet him at a cafe near my hotel. He was already there when I arrived, looking older and more tired than I remembered from Christmas Eve. "Thank you for coming," he said, standing awkwardly. "I ordered you a latte. You still take those, right?" I nodded, surprised. He remembered. "What's this about, Richard?" He sighed heavily, running a hand over his thinning hair. "I wanted to talk to you away from your mother, to explain some things." Over the next hour, Richard painted a picture of my mother I had glimpsed but never fully understood. Her desperate fear of returning to the financial insecurity of her childhood. Her obsession with maintaining appearances among his wealthy business associates. Her panicked reaction when the insurance money arrived. Not greed, he insisted, but terror that it wouldn't be enough to secure her future if anything happened to me. "She's not a bad person, Autumn. She's scared. She always has been. Fear doesn't justify lying," I said. "Or keeping money that wasn't just hers. Or telling people I abandoned the family. No, it doesn't." For the first time, he looked me directly in the eyes. "I should have said something. When she started spreading those stories about you, I should have corrected them. I'm sorry I didn't." His apology, unexpected and seemingly genuine, caught me off guard. Richard had always been a peripheral figure in my emotional landscape. My mother's husband, not quite a stepfather. Yet, here he was, showing more insight and remorse than my own mother had. Why are you telling me this now? Because I've watched Patricia lose herself these past few years. The woman I married was kind despite her insecurities. She loved you kids, even if she didn't always show it well. He stared into his coffee cup. The money changed her. Or maybe it just amplified what was already there. Either way, I don't like what we've become. As we parted ways outside the cafe, Richard awkwardly extended his hand. Whatever you decide about the inheritance, I hope you'll consider keeping the door open, at least a crack. Not for Patricia's sake, or mine for your own. I walked back to my hotel through streets filling with New Year's Eve revelers, their excitement a stark contrast to my contemplative mood. Richard's words echoed in my mind, competing with Aunt Eleanor's stories and Martin's practical legal advice. By the time midnight approached, I had made my decision. I would accept the settlement offer, divide the inheritance as Grandpa intended, and donate my portion to the literacy foundation he had supported for years. The money that had caused so much pain would do some good in the world, and I would close this chapter with as much grace as I could muster. As fireworks exploded over the park, illuminating my hotel room in brief flashes of color, I raised a glass of cheap champagne from the mini fridge. To new beginnings, I said to the empty room, and to letting go. 3 months after that fateful Christmas, spring had begun to soften the Tennessee landscape. Dogwoods bloomed along the highway as I drove to the courthouse for what would hopefully be the final resolution of our inheritance dispute. The legal proceedings had moved slower than expected, complications arising when my mother initially balked at the settlement terms. In the end, though, the judge had reviewed all evidence, including Grandpa Earl's letter, the text messages acknowledging his wishes, and testimony from Aunt Eleanor and other family members, and ruled in our favor. Today was merely a formality, the official division of the insurance proceeds into 3 equal shares. I hadn't seen my mother since Christmas Eve. She had refused mediation sessions, communicating only through her attorney. According to Ethan, who still lived in town, she had become more withdrawn, her social calendar notably less busy as news of our dispute rippled through her carefully cultivated circle. The courthouse was quiet that morning. I spotted my mother and her attorney near the designated conference room, her posture rigid, her gaze fixed straight ahead. She wore a conservative navy suit, her usual jewelry conspicuously absent. "Hello, Mom," I said, approaching them with Martin at my side. She nodded stiffly but said nothing. The proceedings themselves were anticlimactic. Papers signed, accounts verified, perfunctory congratulations from the attorneys. My mother maintained her silence throughout, signing where indicated without comment. Only when everything was complete did she finally meet my eyes. "I hope you're satisfied," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't about satisfaction," I replied. "It's about honoring Grandpa's wishes. Your grandfather didn't understand the realities of my situation. Maybe not, but he understood the importance of fairness." She gathered her purse, preparing to leave. "Richard tells me you're donating your share to that literacy foundation." I nodded, surprised she knew. Grandpa believed in their work. Something flickered across her face. Respect, perhaps, or merely surprise. "Well, that's your choice." "Yes," I said simply. "It is." That brief exchange, mundane as it was, represented the most civil conversation we'd had in months. As I watched her walk away, I felt an unexpected lightness. The anger that had fueled me through the legal battle had gradually dissipated, replaced by a calm acceptance of what our relationship had become and what it would likely never be again. Outside the courthouse, spring sunshine warmed my face. I had taken a week's vacation, but instead of immediately returning to Chicago, I had plans to stay with Ethan for a few days. Our relationship had deepened through this ordeal, weekly phone calls evolving into genuine friendship beyond our shared childhood memories. "How'd it go?" Ethan asked when I arrived at his apartment that afternoon. Surprisingly peaceful. She didn't fight, didn't argue, just signed the papers and left. That's not what I expected. Me neither. I settled onto his couch, the same one I'd slept on that Christmas night. I think she's tired of fighting. Or maybe Richard talked some sense into her. He called me last week, asked how you were doing. That evening, Ethan and I met Aunt Carol, Aunt Eleanor, and several cousins for dinner. What had begun as a small family rebellion against my mother's behavior had evolved into a monthly tradition, a way of maintaining connections that had been neglected for too long. "Have you thought about what you'll do next?" Aunt Carol asked as we shared dessert. "With your mother?" I'm not shutting the door completely," I said after considering the question. "But I'm also not chasing her approval anymore. If she wants a relationship, it has to be built on honesty." "That's wise," and Eleanor nodded. "Boundaries are important, especially with family." The concept of boundaries had been central to my therapy sessions over the past months. After returning to Chicago, I had finally sought professional help to process not just the recent trauma, but the years of conditional acceptance that had shaped my relationship with my mother. Through those weekly sessions, I had begun to understand the pattern we had established. My desperate attempts to earn her approval, her increasingly impossible standards, both of us trapped in roles that brought neither happiness nor growth. My therapist, Dr. Levine, had introduced me to the concept of the grief of recognition, the painful process of acknowledging that the parent you wish you had doesn't exist and never will. That grief had felt overwhelming at first, but gradually it had become manageable, then transformative. Accepting my mother for who she actually was, rather than who I needed her to be, had freed me from expectations that could never be met. The day before I was scheduled to return to Chicago, I received an unexpected text from my mother. "I've put some of your childhood things in a box. Richard can drop them off at Ethan's if you want them." It wasn't an apology, or an olive branch exactly, but it was something. An acknowledgement of my existence at least. I texted back a simple, "Thank you. That would be nice." Richard arrived the next morning with a cardboard box. "She found these when we were reorganizing the storage room," he explained as he handed it over. "She thought you might want them before they got thrown out." Inside were photo albums from my childhood, school projects my mother had saved, my high school yearbooks, and a small jewelry box containing the necklace my grandfather had given me for my 16th birthday, an item I had thought lost. "Thank you for bringing these," I said, genuinely touched by the gesture, however small. Richard shifted uncomfortably on Ethan's doorstep. "She's seeing someone. A therapist, I mean." It was my suggestion after everything that happened. I can't say she's had any major breakthroughs, but it's a start. That information stayed with me on the flight back to Chicago. A complicated emotion somewhere between hope and skepticism taking root. I didn't expect dramatic changes or tearful reconciliations. But maybe, over time, something healthier could grow from the ashes of our old relationship. Back in my Chicago apartment, I set up the photo albums on my bookshelf and placed my grandfather's necklace in my jewelry box. Small pieces of my history reclaimed and reincorporated into my present life. That evening, I called Ethan to let him know I'd arrived safely. "I've been thinking," I said after we caught up. "What if you came to Chicago for Christmas this year? We could start some new traditions." "I'd like that," he replied. "Actually, Melissa might come too if that's okay. Things are getting pretty serious between us." "Of course it's okay. The more the merrier." After we hung up, I sat by my window, watching the Chicago skyline sparkle in the evening light. The city that had once represented my escape now felt like home in a way it never had before. Not because I was running from something, but because I had chosen it, claimed it as my own. The journey from that snowy Christmas Eve to this moment had been painful, revealing truths about my family and myself that had been long buried. But through that pain had come clarity. And through clarity, healing. I had learned that family wasn't defined by blood or money, but by respect, honesty, and genuine care. Some family connections had been broken in the process, perhaps irreparably, but others had been strengthened and new ones formed. As for my mother, only time would tell if our relationship could be rebuilt on healthier ground. I was no longer waiting for her approval to feel complete, no longer measuring my worth through her eyes. Whatever happened between us going forward would be between two adults making conscious choices, not a child desperately seeking validation and a mother withholding it. The inheritance that had sparked this transformation had, in the end, been about much more than money. It had been the catalyst for confronting long-buried truths, for breaking destructive patterns, and for finding the courage to define family on my own terms. In that way, perhaps it was exactly the gift my grandfather had intended all along. So, tell me, what does family truly mean to you? Is it defined by blood, by choice, or something else entirely? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.